And now I'd like to welcome Dan Golding and Dave Temkin to host a panel discussion about what is NANOG doing to develop the next generation of network operators and what could we be doing. Yep. Thank you.
Okay. Can I invite Jessie Cell, Kevin Epperson, and Dr. Ronald Kovac? Hey. Pleasure meeting you. Thanks. Here. So this is. We're going to talk about basically NCI. So that was the larger, how we framed this talk originally. But we thought that it would also be interesting to talk a little bit about the hackathon. And that's why we just had the two teams present. How many people in the room got to go to the hackathon yesterday? That's awesome. You got to go to it? What did you think?
Wonderful. Wonderful experience for the students.
Can we turn the mics on for the panelists?
A mic that should be on.
There you go.
A wonderful experience for the students. I didn't participate, I watched the students do it.
Awesome. Let's just do real quick a round of introductions. So, Jessie, go ahead.
Good morning, I'm Ron Kovac. Pleasure to be at NANOG 67. I'm from the Center for Information Communication Sciences. The center, as we refer to it, is located at Ball State University. It's a one-year master's degree program. We give the students 4 areas: the technology, the legislative regulatory environment, business and management, and then human factors. We have a 97% employment rate, and our people get jobs as network engineers, architects, sales support, business analysts. It's a very good program.
So I'm Jessie Cell. I'm currently working as a consultant for the Markley Group. I'm here in my research capacity, starting as a fellow at Stanford in this coming fall. My dissertation research was on this community. What are the communities and institutions that ensure the private network of networks that are sitting in this room continue to cohere into a globally connected internet? And one of the things I had to learn, and a number of the people I'm looking right at in this audience helped me understand, was how does the NANOG community distill knowledge, distill experience, and share that with new folks coming in the community? And that's been a very guild-like process through NANOG's history. When I look at it with my political science lens on, there's this notion of an epistemic community, a network of professionals that have an authoritative claim to a particular domain of knowledge. Traditional communities, epistemic communities, are physicians, academics, lawyers. What's common to those, but not common to this community, is that all of those learned their expertise through traditional academic paths. You can't garner the knowledge that one gets through NANOG, through other operational communities, from just schooling. You have to immerse yourself in the community. So a lot of my research, especially starting out going on to Stanford, is how do you bridge that gap? How do you bridge the gap between the deep knowledge in this operational epistemic community? How do you help regulators, policymakers, economists understand the nuance of that and move it from being perceived as a second-class anecdotal body of knowledge to something that's first-class, comparable to academic knowledge or knowledge a physician holds? Thanks.
Kevin?
I'm Kevin Epperson. By day, I work at Netflix, for Dave, in fact. During the evenings, I'm an adjunct professor at the University of Colorado, where I teach in a Master's of Telecommunications program. Over the years, I brought several groups of students to NANOG, and I'm fairly passionate about figuring out how to bridge the corporate side with the academic side, to figure out how to place those students in the industry and convince them that it's a good industry to work in.
My name is Dan Golding. I'm the chairman of NANOG's board of directors. I'm also an engineering manager at Google. Historically, I've been an adjunct professor in the MS in Telecom program at George Mason. One of the things that's really important to me as I wind up my term as chair is really trying to repoint NANOG from being a network engineering conference in the old school of network engineering and trying to align NANOG a little bit better with the future. The future for us are students in school. We've got a real pipeline problem in this community. And in addition to that, we need to make sure that those students coming in have the right skills. I think the hackathon yesterday was a great sort of proof point about where those skills need to be. I think that's going to be a little bit of a painful transformation for this community, but for those of us who have lots and lots of open recs that we're trying to fill, we want to make NANOG a place where we can send our recruiters, where we can find the next generation of network engineers and the next generation of network leaders. And I think NCI and the hackathon are the start of that process.
Absolutely, and you know, as you know from my previous talk, I'm Dave Temkin, the vice chair of the NANOG board. To me, what is super important to bolster what Dan said is NANOG needs to become effectively where people who are the next generation of network engineers come to learn and to talk and to socialize and use this environment as the hub for that. Much less focus on, hey, we need to get together 3 times a year and talk about what the cool new stuff is. That's super important. But at the end of the day, what is really our mission here is to share knowledge. And it's fun to hear these guys on the stage. I'm the odd man out here. I'm not the academic. I was the one who hated high school and was thankful that I could be done and over with afterwards. And so I don't think about things in the same way that academics tend to. But in starting the NCI program, I saw that there was a huge gap that we could fill in bringing people from that community into this program. Not only can we help them learn, but they can help us learn a lot too. Mm-hmm. So it was interesting to hear that some of the NCI students participated in the hackathon yesterday. I heard that they started kind of on the sidelines and then worked their way in as they got more comfortable. Many of them are communication students, so they're not coders, but the hackathon was designed to give everyone basically the ability to contribute in some meaningful way. We think that that is a big part of the future, right? There are various different ways that we can use programs like the hackathon to continue to grow the educational mission in NANOG. So I would ask maybe Jessie, even though you're long since out of undergrad, why do you think NCI is important? Why is it important to you?
So I can channel what or I can repeat what and I'm going to call out Mr. Dindy sitting right in front of me. When I first came to NANOG, I was like, I thought I was pretty good at computer science when I was an undergrad, and I came and I saw some presentation. I was like, holy crap! I have no idea what these guys are saying. And I had lunch with Greg at the end of my NANOG, and I was like, and he was like, we're going to treat you like we treat any fresh out of college. We know you're a grad student, fancy, great, good, but we're going to treat you like any fresh out of undergrad student. We're going to have to kind of baby walk you through operations mechanics. We're going to have to teach you how to translate your technical knowledge of some of basic algorithms to how those play out and where those break and where those don't. So to me, it's extraordinarily important because it's a body of knowledge that just is not conveyed in traditional computer science programs, and I'd love to hear your response to this, given that you're working with a program that's actually trying to correct that.
We are really trying. We try to give a lot of hands-on experience. We're still theoretically based. We try to give hands-on experience, bring the students to as many conferences as possible, give them the many outside experiences, but still we hear from them after they go out. It's a shocker the first year. They didn't touch enough, they didn't play enough. There's a lot more to learn at a different level. Although I will tell you this, after they've been out in the field for 4 or 5 years, they'll say, I do miss the academic stimulation that I got in college. Interesting.
And Kevin, you've had, I think, over 30 students come through here now, including the ones that are here now at this meeting. What are the takeaways? What do you think really, first answer that same question, which is why is it important to you? And then second, what do you feel your students have gotten out of it?
Sure. So why it's important to me, there's a couple pieces there. The first one is I get to bring my students here, which bringing them to be in a room with 900 other network professionals and socialize with them is great for me. What the students don't know, they'll know now, but all the people they talk to come back and tell me how that talk went. They give me feedback real time about what the good things were, what the gaps were. It allows me to cater my teaching style from semester to semester to fill those gaps. So I love that. The next part is well, I hope my boss doesn't hear this actually, but I don't want to work as much, right? I'd like to work less. I would like to retire eventually. I think the best way that we can make sure that happens for me and for the rest of you is to make sure that pipeline is full, to make sure that we have the next generation of architects and engineers and operators to work on our networks. So that's what I get out of it and what's important to me. What the students get out of it is a lot of stuff. They get exposure to all of these tracks and talks and a lot of smart people, present company excluded, talking about really smart things and really cool things. And I think that's super important, and they can get some of that elsewhere, but they get that here. The second piece they get is they get exposure to all these folks. So they get to network, live people networking with real people that know what they're talking about. And I think that is by far the most interesting piece for the students is the people networking aspect, learning how to do it and then actually making those industry contacts.
Can I ask a question though? Can I ask a question? Is that networking productive? So are they getting jobs based on this? Are they getting internships? Are they, are we doing it right in terms of making sure that both, the regular NANOG attendees who we need people and the NCI folks who need jobs, are we making that match properly, or is that something we still need to work on?
I think we can always make it better, but I have gotten really positive feedback from all of the students that have come through here before. I don't know if it's 100%, but it's pretty close to 100% placement rate. I know several people were hired directly from interactions that occurred at the last couple of NANOGs.
Great.
They always say to hire people smarter than you. I'll have to include that in my self-assessment for this year. Figure out what went wrong there. No, actually, you're right, which is, my opinion is, you're hiring effectively to keep people you want to keep people in that hiring pipeline, right? There should be an oversupply of people, right? Not that competition is not helpful for all of us as employees of companies, but you want to be able to pick the right person for the right job. And if we continue to invest in developing those people, we'll get to a point where we can feel like that pipeline is full. And I don't think it is today. And so Dan, I was going to ask you.
It is not. Right now, it feels like there's not any slack in the hiring pipeline.
Right, and so from your perspective as an employer, why is NCI important to you?
I think it's important because, as I said, we have a pipeline problem. Listen, I've got a kid who's a computer science major at a great school, not even considering network engineering. It's not the hot thing. It's infrastructure. Well, but there is some of that.
And we shouldn't gloss over that. Patrick, you said it as a joke, but it's true, and we do have to think about the diversity aspect of it, right? STEM in general is still an issue. For getting women and minorities into STEM is still an issue. Yeah. And I would hope that NANOG will continue to play an evolving role in helping to fix that, which that problem starts long before everyone is in this room. But hopefully by getting involved earlier in the process, we can help that along.
And that's a great point, because this is a pipeline problem. The pipeline problem starts somewhere around middle school, where a lot of folks are discouraged from doing anything technical. And by the time those kids who are technical get into college, if they want to do something in CS or electrical engineering or a related field, what is hot right now? What are hot right now are mobile apps, are social networks, are Internet of Things, are certain sorts of devices. What is not hot is this. And I hate to say that, I don't mean to be a downer, but most of the kids who are coming up, the young adults, look at this field and A, they don't understand it. They certainly do not think there's a software engineering element to it. And of course, there's now a huge software engineering element. They do not think that this is something that is a interesting field that they can grow in, that they can make the sort of money they want to make in. And one of the important things about NCI and about the hackathon and about all the other programs that NANOG should do around this is it's a way to reach out to those folks who have no exposure whatsoever to infrastructure professionals. None. They've never met one. They're computer science majors, they're double E's. They've never met anyone in our field ever during their entire time they're in school. It's a way to reach out to them and say, this is an option, maybe it's not what you think. There's an entree here, it's very interesting work. There's a strong demand for highly trained folks. So why don't you come in and give it a try? And if there's one thing NCI does, it's to say, hey, this is a viable option, which is why I think it should be expanded pretty significantly past telecom programs, where most of the folks already know this is an option, into straight CS programs and double E programs.
Can I just grab a question from the floor?
Hi, thanks. Eve Grillicus from Cisco. I joined a very old boy network, and there's a very good data point that came out recently. Harvard Business School review said that over 45% of women in engineering drop out. And the reason for that dropout is a lack of mentoring. So I do feel that if you do want women to grow in this area, it's actually up to the men to help mentor the women more. That's
Completely agree. And as I look around on the stage, I realize as the person who put this panel together, I messed up. Yes. Jessie.
I was about to suggest that one of the things that building off of Dan's comment is that one vector for that. So Dave cast me back to my days as an undergrad. One thing that my undergrad Clemson did a lot was they had a very strong co-op program where your 4-year program became 5 years, and you were encouraged to do 3 co-op sessions, and where one vector for growing the NCI program might be to use NANOG as kind of like the clearinghouse for access to these to the variety of companies that you could then say, these are the companies that are looking for co-ops in this domain. So it both advertises the domain as well as gets folks experience. So you can try before you buy, and you can also do some training on the job and have them report out.
It's an interesting idea. One of the things that's been pretty clear is that this isn't actually a co-op heavy field. And that's the case in CS in general. It's an internship heavy field, whereas traditional engineering disciplines are more co-op. It's a lot easier to be a co-op. I was a mechanical engineer as an undergraduate. It's much easier to be a co-op there than it is to be a co-op here. And so this is something we've talked about. We can't figure out how to get that particular piece off the ground. I think things like having an internship hiring fair, however, things like that, some way to, there's a fear. And I'll just come right out and say it to see if people agree or not. There's a fear on the board that if we are too friendly with recruiters, that companies will stop sending people to NANOG because they think that recruiters are there to hire people, so they'll stop sending people. I guess I have the opposite view, and I see people nodding. I have the opposite view that if we get enough NCI folks, young folks, and have something like an internship hiring fair, an entry-level hiring fair, we deliberately bring recruiters out to do that. I think it goes from being a scary endeavor to being something maybe a little bit more positive. But if folks want to rock the mic and comment on that, it would be pretty awesome.
It's like the cartoon, whatever. It's like from the New Yorker, I think, of basically, what if we invest in someone and they leave us, right?
Yes.
If we invest money in their education and their future and they leave us, and then the counter is, well, what if we don't invest,
yes.
right? What are we left with? In the center here.
One quick comment. Hi, my name is Joel Krauska. I work for Kentic. I've observed that, especially for companies that I'm interested in working at, smaller size companies, the jobs are no longer there. It used to be every small company had 2 racks, 2 routers, 2 firewalls, 2 sets of switches. That doesn't exist anymore. You can't even get a /24 for a small company anymore. I want to just point out that the industry is now more consolidated. It's bigger companies. It's for me, that's not something I want to work at. not to like ruin all my job prospects for the future. But I think it's a strong consideration of what types of opportunities are out there and how that may be changing or can be more targeted.
Yep. Over on the right.
Mike Thompson, Argonne National Lab. I have kind of a bias, but I wonder what you all think about the fact that, I mean, I think infrastructure and internet infrastructure especially is very, very cool, but there are a handful of people outside of this room and the people in this room who know anything about it. And I think part of that is a marketing problem with cloud and all the things that are happening right now where it's very attractive for cloud companies, for their customers to not know anything about their infrastructure. But I think if especially young people knew more about the infrastructure, and again, this might be my bias, they might be more hooked in and think it was a lot cooler and want to dive into it more. And I was just curious what people on the stage's opinion is.
Yeah, Jessie, do you want to?
For my dissertation work, I had to kind of explore this community on my own, and that was not an insignificant amount of travel and work to kind of what social scientists would call the snowball effect. You meet one person, you get them to tell you who other knowledgeable folks are. So as Patrick stretches there, he was one of the first people that I met and was able to introduce me to a lot of folks. Dave, a lot of other folks introduced me to many, many other folks, but that took a lot of time, and that's a heavy investment. I had to like continuously convince my committee that it was worth this. There was this knowledge base there that you could garner. But one of the benefits of NCI would be to shortcut that process and say, here's your short list of folks that are in this domain that are really willing to help, and that's something that's right along the lines of that comment.
Kevin, what do you think?
I think there's definitely a perception issue, and I see that in the makeup of the program that I teach at, where we have very few domestic students because they just don't think this is interesting. And I think part of that is on us, not on us, but we could help solve that problem with NANOG to show that this is a really interesting segment and bit of the industry to work in. I think NANOG on the Road series is a great possibility. It has lots of a shorter program, more localized, more cities hit. That's the kind of place where maybe we can attract folks to come look and see what we're up to and see that it is interesting.
And one thing that's certainly true is that this is a relatively small engineering discipline. There are probably, it's not just the people in this room, there's more, right? But there's probably fewer than 10,000 engineers, who fit in this bucket. And yes, increasingly there are big companies, a few big companies. But if 10,000 sounds like a lot, but if you compare it to like the smallest of the traditional engineering disciplines like fire protection engineering, 10,000 is really, really small. And so it's going to be important for us to sort of hit above our weight in the coming years to get the word out that we're actually a thing. Because I'm not even sure, to some degree I don't want to do that, but to some degree it's also, that's a thing, like that's something people do. I think that's one of the things we need to do is be a little bit louder as a community.
Over on the left there.
Hi, Ryan Rodden, Conversant again. I was curious, one of the things that I think people learn the most when they're coming out of school and coming into an infrastructure role in an organization, it takes some time to develop the, what my colleagues and I call the infrastructure mindset. The thoroughness, the attention to detail when making production changes or doing otherwise risky operations or basic operations that can be risky in a certain environment. And I'm curious what your thoughts are on giving students and other entrants to the infrastructure specialties exposure to that, or is it something inherently scary they need to learn, trial by fire style?
I think there's the two operators up here. We can speak to that. But
I think trial by fire is terrible. I think 1998 called and they want their network operations paradigm back, right? And I was
they want commit confirm.
Yeah, I was someone who learned sort of trial by fire, and boy, I bought a lot of networks down. I think there's now a lot of reasonable evidence that if you get someone who's a trained engineer or computer scientist, that with somewhere around 2 years of training in an organization that knows what it's doing, you can impart that sort of that sort of operational discipline. I don't think it's something that needs to, nobody has that, right? Nobody comes with that, out of the package. You can hire folks in the military. They typically have a lot of this discipline in them already, although, network skills there are not as high as I would like to see. But this is something with just a couple of years you can instill, or you can pretty easily tell you'll never be able to instill it and have them go do something else.
So I would say the one interesting kind of corollary to that is, we were just talking about internships and co-ops. That's why, to some extent, it's really a challenge to do either one in this industry. It's easy to hire someone to write some code, and you can throw that code away, or you can use it and do whatever you want to do from that aspect, or write an app, or whatever that might be, as a small little nugget of a project. But we start talking about a network, i.e. a large interdependent system with a bunch of different pieces, inserting someone into that temporarily and then pulling them out without them having the full context of what they're working on is generally not going to be hugely successful.
So we this semester did a microsegmentation, not any new sexy stuff, but microsegmentation of a 500-person network. We just did hot cutover last weekend. I involved my whole class in this. We had every detail taken care of. We think we did. And actually, it did work out quite well. But we believe in being as immersive as possible. I spent 2-3 weeks talking about the needs assessment, the architecture, the plan. They knew it all already, and then they all helped in the cutover. It was wonderful.
Awesome.
And that is something interesting.
Brian, could I just, because we're running out of time, so could I just move on to the next question over there in the room?
Thank you, Bradley Williams, Finger Lakes Technologies Group. I just wanted to expand a little bit on what Jessie was saying earlier. I'm a product of what's nominally a network and systems engineering degree. But unfortunately, a lot of the program focused on the systems side. So my co-op work, most of my coursework, my program advisors, they were all systems people. There was a lot of self-drive, self-mentoring type thing to become a network engineer. I think that this program has the ability to, drive people to networks specifically that even college programs don't otherwise offer, aside from Mr. Kovac's.
Matt Petak, Yahoo. I actually have a stockpile of things as people have been talking. So first, Dan, to your point from 2 or 3 hops ago, anybody who thinks that there isn't recruiting happening actively at NANOG has their head buried deeply in the sand. This has been going on for a long time. We all do it. We all know it. We just don't talk so much about it. Let's actually just be upfront, open about it, and say, it happens. Let's acknowledge it. Let's make it a real part of the actual program. First point. Second point, in terms of what is sexy, what people are interested in doing, one of our big challenges is we need good storytellers. We need people who come up and tell about situations, tell about challenges, how they solved them in a way that engages people, that reaches out, that really human to human talks to people. One of the reasons why Jeff Houston is one of our repeat speakers over and over again is he comes up on stage and he tells a damn good story every time. So if we can get more storytellers, we're going to get more people interested in, hey, this sounds like something awesome I could do. Third piece, in terms of the immersion, dive in head first and learn trial by fire, I think things like the takeoff effort that we just heard about are going to be amazing at letting the new generation come in and feel better about jumping in without a 2-year ramp-up cycle, knowing that there's some level of safety net that when we were starting off we didn't have, that would try to make sure that when they're learning, they don't wipe out entire major networks like that. Thank you.
Thanks, Matt. Yeah, please.
One of the things, so building off that comment and building off some of the breaking of eggs versus not, that's one of the things I think there's a really fantastic balance that I heard over and over again with interviews of network operators that I did for my dissertation was we got to break eggs and we got to learn by doing that. But I think one of the challenges that Matt just brought up is how do you create an environment where you can break some unimportant eggs and have that same learning experience, but without. So essentially, it's asking how do you build a lab that is actually is consistent with reality, or at least approximate to. Because when I was hearing Dan talk a little bit, if you walk into any chemical engineering department of any significant size, one of their floors is a dedicated plant-like environment where they drop their students in for their practicum at the end of their coursework. This is what a plant actually looks like. That's that to me is a big challenge for the college immersion program. Is how can you help education programs build the equivalent of that operations lab where people can break eggs and experiment.
Yeah, and people ask the board quite frequently, you had this education series you were doing for a while, why did you get rid of it? And it was because it was a very kind of anemic environment where people were doing conft, router, BGP, blah, didn't simulate anything in the real world, and didn't differentiate it from anything that they could get online. And so to your point, we need to think more about that, and the hackathon, I think, was a great start. We'll take the last question from the floor, and then we're out of time.
Hi, I'm Steve Powell from Level 3, and my question is this body of work that we describe, or these disciplines that we describe as network engineering, is this sort of just enumerated on any of the public education sites, like, for example, Khan Academy? And if it is, could we leverage that by just adding the additional detail, and maybe by just putting it out there and just see what sticks in terms of getting people interested in this field?
The whole ICT field is so new, and network engineering especially is just not understood by the masses. How do we market that? That's a good question.
Any closing thoughts to answer that? I think it is definitely an issue. We've kind of covered this a few times in the sexiness of it, getting people to understand what this is. Maybe we're all biased in the room. I'm sure we all are. Everyone in here, the first time you walked into a data center and you saw how cool it was, like, I'm sure there's some people who don't get that feeling, and so we can't mistake the fact that not everyone thinks that's sexy, but there's certainly people that we can reach out to that I don't think we are today. And on that note, we're out of time. We're super out of time. Okay.
So this is for the education part of it. So let's say if we make it a formal education part and we promote network engineering, but the thing is the world is moving towards automation and the jobs are reducing on the scale. So how would you fix that problem if you make it as a formal education? And that would definitely impact the students or grads who are doing it.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. We tried the formal education thing. It simply didn't work as well, and people voted with their feet, and we probably had more people at the hackathon yesterday than we had in the entire history of doing the NANOG educational series, which I think is a pretty effective statement.
Yeah, it's a testament. Yeah. Okay, so we're going to cut it off there. I'm sorry, we've got scheduled lunches and things like that. Thank you so much to my panelists. You guys were awesome, and I'll hand this off to Sean.
All right.